Hey everybody. So lots of things have been going on. Look at that. It's like 80s hair. Um and I wanted to sort of muse about it for a little bit. So one of the things that I'm doing is I'm taking like a chakra class. And we did I wasn't there for first chakra, but we did second chakra, and we're finishing up third chakra right now. And this is what the chakra is located in your solar plexus, and it formed around the age of like toddlerhood, 2 3. And it's sort of your will. It's like when you first started having a will of your own, basically. um or being able to act on it, right? um and there's a lot of stuff that is housed in that area, and one of the things that's associated with that is where your shame is from. It's where it's located. It's the shadow, right? One of the shadows of the third chakra is shame. And one of the things that we were just talking about is the difference between shame and guilt. And this was from we were talking about Brene Brown, who's, I haven't really read much of her stuff, but apparently she's amazing. But the difference between shame and guilt, and I'm familiar with both. Shame is like, I am a bad person, and guilt is I did something bad. Like, so it's focused on the person or on the action, the behavior. I don't like either. They're not fun. They're not fun emotions. We all have them though. And I just it's something that's been kind of it's very related to something that I've been, which makes sense because I'm going through these classes to clear the chakras, right? So one of the things that's kind of been going around in my brain recently is and I've talked about it a few times, is this idea that, I've been getting these messages from people saying that, like, I'm like full of love, and then I exude it when people are around, and I have some kind of nice effect on people. I don't know. But this is what they're telling me. And I'm not having the best reaction to it. It's a very strange thing. You'd think that people telling you nice things about yourself would make you feel good. And it does, but it doesn't. It freaks me out. And there's a number of reasons for that. Because I don't feel like it's true. I feel like I'm going to be found out to be a charlatan. Like, it's not true. They think these things, and then one day they're going to get to know me, and they're going to see that it's not actually true what they're thinking, and they're going to be really disappointed in me, and I'm going to be disappointed because they're going to realize that it's not true, which is going to make me realize that it's not true. So it's going to be like, oh, well, if I accept this and then it turns out not to be true, that's a problem for me. I don't want that. So I'm just not going to accept it. But this is really part of it is very much related to shame, right? Like, when I was younger, I was very much told that being who I am as a person isn't okay. Which is a shame. Because if I am this awesome person, and being told that that's not cool is kind of lame. But one of the things that I was talking about in this class was last time I was at my parents' house, I had been feeling really bad about something in my relationship with my father. My father is a very religious man. He's very Catholic, and he has had some really amazing accomplishments in his life. And one of them is actually, it's a crazy story, but it's actually like a literal miracle that he had. Like, the Vatican actually said, yeah, that's a miracle. Like, it's a big deal. And his whole family, we were all like, just like, leave us out of it. We don't want to hear about it. Which kind of sucks, you know what I mean? Like, it does kind of suck. It's a big deal, and his whole family's like, I don't want to deal with it. So I really wanted to communicate with him and tell him, like, look, I really admire these things about you, and then I love you, and I really admire these things about you, and I feel bad that we never supported you, and I just want you to know that I think it's amazing. And I mean, this goes back a long time in my father's, childhood, and then my childhood, my relationship with my dad. It's all very complicated. But the only thing you need to know for the story is that I went to tell him that, and he couldn't hear it. I said, Dad, I just wanted to tell you, I know we don't say this a lot in our family. And right then he's like, oh, I know, honey, I know, it's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm like, no, Dad, I just wanted, you don't know. I just wanted to say that I love you. He's like, oh, I love you too. I love you too. It's great. No, it's fine. And he's walking away. I'm like, no, Dad, I just want to tell you like how much I admire you. And he's like, I know, it's good. And he had to leave the room. He was so uncomfortable that he couldn't let me finish a sentence about how I loved him, or how I admire him, or anything from. It makes me so sad. It really makes me so sad for him, because one of the things we were talking about is like shame. You think you're bad. You think that there's something fundamentally wrong with you, and he couldn't hear that because he didn't feel like he deserves it. Which is interesting. It's really sad. And it's also very interesting because my father is, it's really sad. My father, yeah, I feel really bad for him. I can have a lot of compassion for him, but then like I hang out with him and he does something and I'm like, ugh! Like we just have this relationship that's just like, but I, as an adult, am letting go of that. It's a fire though. It's a fire when I get revved up like that. I'm gonna relax and release right now because I'm feeling it. It's like it's this tension that rises and starts doing this inside when I think about it. So yeah, there's a lot of tension in my body thinking about like just in this area. I don't know if you can, like from here down to like my solar plexus, which is where the third chakra is that we're working on. Yeah, like it's a constricted heart space. And I am going to work on releasing. Another thing we were talking about was that the work, when we do work on ourselves, we also heal our parents and our children. And granted, I don't have any children. But, it can heal the people around us, the people who grew up with us, the people who have meant the most in our lives. So I'm working on forgiveness as well, right? Forgiveness of the way, the relationship my father and I had when I was younger and how he behaved, because I can see, and I've been able to see for a long time, where it stems from and how much pain must be there. And the fact that he can't hear, he cannot hear, like, I love you. He cannot hear. That's so sad. Because I know my mother doesn't say it. I mean, I can't imagine she hasn't in a long time. So it's really his kids and his grandkids that say it. And we don't say it often. It's more like, okay, Dad, love you, kind of thing. It makes me so sad. So, there is a lot of forgiveness that I can give because of this. And when you shine compassion, the light of compassion on it, right, it can't exist anymore. I was just listening to Michael Singer a minute ago. And one of the things he said, and I've talked about this before, but it strikes me, it's something that resonates with me, is like when you forgive someone, that means you've already judged it. And forgiveness is important. It's very important. But what he wants to communicate is the more important thing is to let go of the thing that needs to be forgiven. Right? So that's me that's me letting go of, there's a lot to let go of, right? I can do it though. I can do it. For both of us, the sad little boy that my father really never grew out of his whole life, 80 something years, 83 years. He's been, well, maybe, so he got to 5. Let's say he got to 5. And then he's been a 5-year-old for like almost 80 years. And this 5-year-old who, thanks, Brenda. He's a 5-year-old who never received enough love, never felt loved, always felt he had to prove himself. He went through a lot. And then on top of it, he's Catholic. You know what I mean? And he's very Catholic. And as anybody out there who's had experience with Catholicism knows, like, it's all about shame. It's all about how unworthy we are. Like, how very, like, at our soul, like, our core. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, this is how I grew up and spent the first 20 odd years of my life. At your very core, when you're Catholic, that your very core is unworthy. It is, Brenda, exactly. It's all about guilt. Like, and for nothing, for existing. I feel guilty for existing is basically what the Catholics say. I have less experience with other Christianities, other denominations, and they, to a degree, do the same thing. But the Catholics, they hang the dead body right up there for you to see it. You know what I mean? And I was spending some time. My father writes lots of essays. Catholic essays. He's actually like I wouldn't say a thought leader in the church. I'm not that into the church to know where in the echelon he is, but he's a deacon, and he had this miracle that was ratified by the Vatican, which is a big deal if you don't know. And he writes, he's got this brother word processor that I had when I was 16. I'm 43 now. I had this brother word processor when I was 16, and he took it when I left the house and got a computer, for college. And he's been working on it ever since. It's got 32K memory, and he's got little discs, and he writes a lot of essays on it. So what he does is he writes essays, he prints them up, and then he gives them to me to type into the computer for him. It's a thing. So he gave me a stack of essays, I think over Christmas break, when I was visiting them for Christmas. And he asked me to type them, which I have done. And, when you go through them, there's some, like, the thought that goes into them. It's just like, it's all about how unworthy we are. It's all about, like, how bad we should feel, and how because, like, this is interesting. The correlation of how bad you feel about yourself correlates exactly with how grateful you are to God for forgiving you. So it's this dichotomy. And this is crazy, the worse you feel about yourself, the better Catholic you are, because the more grateful you can be to God for forgiving you. How fucked up is that? That's messed up. And it's just, because you look at original sin, it is, Brenda, it's insane. You look at the concept of original sin, and, you're told, Catholics, they just recently got rid of the idea of limbo, which is where babies go when they die if they haven't been baptized. They don't go to heaven in Catholicism. They go to, like, purgatory, like limbo. Like babies. Like babies that haven't been baptized. Catholic babies are baptized within the first year of life. There's nothing this child could have done that makes it so they shouldn't go to heaven. And yet they can't go to heaven because they haven't been baptized. That's what a bad person, that's the crux of how evil you are just for being alive. You know, it's insane. It's crazy. And you're programmed with this from a very young age. And my father grew up in a bad situation. You know what I mean? He arrested at about 5 years old. He's very much like a clinical narcissist. And I mean, he's a great guy. And when I say narcissist, I really don't mean like, oh, I'm, you know, he's not a bad guy. He just physically can't think of anybody but himself when it comes to something where he's emotionally involved. When it comes to other things, I mean, my mother made him get a job with the state because he was a lawyer. He is a lawyer, was a lawyer. And he would give his services out for free just because people said they couldn't pay. You know, I mean, lawyer services. And my mom's like, okay, you're getting a job with the state because anybody could talk him out of it. He's a good man. He's just very, he had to prove himself. He had dyslexia, and back then, you know, I mean, he was born in 38. So there's all these factors that went into it, and this being that he is. And so when I talked to him when I tried to tell him that I loved him and that I was proud of him, like, thinking about it, that's nothing he's ever heard. I know, Brenda, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but that's how we grew up. That's how I was taught. I am bad for existing. And the only way to make up for that badness is to believe in Jesus Christ and his death and what his death and resurrection meant for you, which is he paid our debt. He paid our debt. God made us bad. God made us bad. Well, okay, no. Eve, right? Eve, the woman, made us bad. It wasn't God. He just knew what was going to happen. I don't know. It's just a messed up system of beliefs. And my father probably has never heard someone say that they're proud of him or they admire, or at least his family members. I mean, who knows, you know, but I can't imagine, certainly not in the past 30 years, tell him, you know, like, I love you, I'm proud of you, I admire you. And I was thinking, we were talking about this where God doesn't judge. No, he doesn't, Brenda. He doesn't. And it's so sad that people are taught that he does. I mean, but when you look at the Bible, honestly, and you understand the history of this God that the Christians, Judeo-Christian, Muslim, all the Abrahamic religions, right? The history is that God, Yahweh, from what I understand, was a God of war, and he just kind of won out over the other gods. And they're like, oh, he's the one, numero uno. And I mean, so that's his nature, right? I don't know. So this is the God that I grew up with, and what I struggled with when I got to be the age of reason, around 15. I started like, this does not make a lot of sense. Actually, if Robin's still here, I'm gonna invite her to join me because we were just having a conversation. So this is what, you know, I grew up with, and what's Robin?
Hi.
Hey, look at you in your fedora. I love
it. Happy St. Patrick's Day, although it's not for very much longer.
I know, right? But it's here. It's here. So we were just talking a minute ago about shame, and I was just telling the people out here in TV land about the third chakra and what we were talking about, shame, and specifically like growing up Catholic and my father and how he can't hear words of affirmation.
Right.
And that is probably has to do. Oh, Brenda, you were raised Catholic too? I didn't know that. Brenda's a friend of mine. So I just wanted to
Hi,
come
Brenda.
on. Brenda's awesome. You would love Brenda. You and Brenda would get along very well.
Awesome.
So yeah, so growing up Catholic, we were kind of just taught to hate ourselves.
Well, I think I mean, that's kind of true. I think that's kind of true in a lot of organized religions is like that inherent belief that we're sinners by nature, and it's only through God's redemption that we can be redeemed, right? And it's because of God's mercy that he sent his only son to us, and that saved the world, and I think that how do I say this? And you were talking earlier about forgiveness, and I was listening to you talk about like how we're supposed to be so grateful for God's forgiveness, and that we get forgiven for things we haven't even done yet because God in His infinite mercy, which is actually true, but the message got lost. Like the message actually about the whole sin and people are just sinners and messed up, I think was a part of a way to like control the masses, right? There's a level of control that happens in Catholicism and even Judaism or whatever. Like there were some of the major organized religions. There's control. It's a control piece. But the reality is the point is we are meant to be grateful that we have been given like mercy and like this abundance, and like that the gratitude is what the world works on. But like it's not because we sinned. Like we're worthy because we exist, right? So God decided it wanted to know consciousness, and so it created humans to know consciousness because it's a whole whatever. But like
it's a whole thing.
It's not that we have to be forgiven for something we've done wrong, but that's how we're taught to it. So that there is that level of like abnegation of self, totally, right? And the Catholic faith is like, if you don't exist, you'll be powerful in the eyes of God, which is true and not true. Again, it's always about surrender, but it's not like because we're bad, it's because we're amazing. And that's the problem, is we're supposed to be here to know how amazing we really are, and it's not because some off-planet deity decided to forgive us.
Right.
Right? It's because we forgive ourselves for forgetting that there was only ever love in the first place.
Yes.
That's the sin. That's the sin, is that we forget that it was just love to start with. And we think there's not enough. And we live in that fear and lack and scarcity place. And that's the forgiveness. That's the ultimate forgiveness, is like forgetting that we are these magnificent divine beings. And that's sort of our purpose in being alive.
Right. It is. It's our purpose. Our purpose in being alive is to be grateful, not because we're evil,
Right.
but because there's like, you and I have talked about this before, but we are the universe made conscious of itself. And that's fucking amazing.
Right.
Like, what?
Right. Yes.
What? It's all this cool shit. And now the universe can be like, look at all the cool shit.
Right, exactly. That's exactly sort of the point. But like, there's right. Your dad grew up Catholic, right? So there's that demonization of anything. There's like the demonization of anything that's human, right? Anything that makes us human, emotions, passions, desires, all of it gets demonized.
Yes.
And we internalize that. It's like people just don't know how to not that. So then there's like real shame and trauma just for being who we are. Right. Yeah,
exactly. And we grow up with that. But you're right, it is, I mean, like, one of the things I find super interesting about religions is the history of them, right? Like Catholicism, all of a sudden, now my brain's like, whatever, Constantine in the year 300 was like, hey, you know what? You know what we could do with these Christian people?
Right.
Is we could take over. We get to decide what books they're going to read,
right,
and what their beliefs are.
Right. It's all
you
about
know?
control. It's all about controlling the masses. It's about the
It is.
people in power. And Martha Beck did this really cool thing recently on Instagram about like consciousness and like no matter what society it was, there's always a pyramid, and sometimes like the people at the bottom rise up, and then they create a new pyramid. But there's always like a power structure, right? And that's always been true, right? And that consciousness like kind of levels the playing field. There's no pyramid anymore. It's
Right.
all just one soup. It was neat because you're
That's
right.
interesting.
Yeah, it was very cool. Look it up. Look, Martha Beck did it on Instagram. I posted it to my story weeks ago, but like, it was interesting. But like when Constantine did it, it was about control, and they were going to control the pagans by, all right, well, you believe this, you believe that Easter, Ostara, is the birth of the goddess or whatever. We'll just call that Easter. That was just like,
We'll just take that.
we'll just
Christmas,
plop
the
that.
Yule, huh? Well, Jesus was born in the springtime,
Right.
but we
He
need
is
to
the
take that
light.
holiday too.
Right, exactly. We're gonna the rebirth of the light, right? So I mean, all of them, and it was ultimately about like control, right? If you
Yeah.
control what they think, you control the person.
Yeah, and I mean, and then what better way to control them than to make them think they really suck?
Right, exactly.
Just for being alive.
You suck, I know.
I'll do whatever you say just so I don't go to hell.
Exactly. Brenda, yes, I have read A Course in Miracles. Well, I read Marianne Williamson's sort of interpretation of it. Yep.
I'm sorry. You're really low for me. Your volume.
I'm sorry. Is that better?
Oh, that's a little better. Yeah, I think it's my phone. But so what did you just say about miracles?
Brenda just asked, "Have we read A Course in Miracles?" And I said yes.
Oh, I have not read that. I should read that.
It's really really powerful work. Yeah.
Brenda is why I read The Untethered Soul and why my life changed because of it. So yeah. We have a lot of gratitude for Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, Brenda. Yeah, I'll have to read that. Did I ever tell you the story about my dad and his miracle?
No.
So my dad, I'm gonna give you like the super, super short version of it. My father, I'll have to read Return to Love too.
That Return to Love is one of my that's what those like there's like one of those, you read those books and there's like a before and an after. Like Return to Love is like one of my favorite quotes from ever is from A Return to Love.
Really? What's the quote?
It's not our light that we're afraid of, it's our darkness, and you're like, who am I to be this? And I'm paraphrasing obviously and bastardizing her words, right? Exactly. And it's like, I say, who are you not to be this magnificent amazing creature? It like that colors what I do and how I operate and how I work, because it's like, well, who are you not to do that? And
yeah, who are you? Like, what are you doing within this incredible identity of the universe made conscious of itself? You're amazing,
right?
What are you doing?
And why would you throw that away? It's like the same God that made rainbows and mountains and like decided we needed a Jen and a Brenda and a Robin, and it's like, right? Who are you not to embrace this?
Like, look at this.
Right? Exactly.
It's amazing. It is. So my dad became a deacon in the Catholic Church, and during the period of time, there's 4 years that he has to go to deacon school. He had a big back problem, like a really major one that meant that he would have to stop being a deacon. And he prayed. He saw this kind of ad on Catholic TV that was like, hey, pray to this guy, and if something happens that's a little out of the ordinary, let us know. So he prayed, and basically he was healed.
Nice.
Like instantaneously.
Yeah.
And the Vatican investigated it for 4 years, because what they do is try to prove it wrong. Mm-hmm. They try and prove it's not a miracle, because if they say something's a miracle and it's found out later not to be a miracle, like that casts doubt on everything. So they spent 4 years trying to disprove that this was a miracle, and they ended up deciding that yes, it was a miracle. Thank you, Brenda.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
So they decided it was a miracle, and then because of that miracle, Cardinal Newman, who any Catholic would know, there's like a Newman Center on every campus. It's like a school thing. Became beatified, and then eventually became canonized because of my father.
Wow.
Yeah. He is Catholic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. And when I tried to tell him how cool I thought it was, he was like, ah, and he ran
Right,
away.
because you can't hear it, because of that deep, deep, deep internalized shame. But when you have those miracle healings, that is your soul touching God. That is your soul knowing the hand of God, right? That's a truth. Of
Absolutely.
course, it actually is a miracle, right? That's actually
100%.
right.
There's no denying it. The doctors were like, we don't know what happened. All of the doctors
Right.
were like, we don't know. It was impossible. It shouldn't have been possible. You know, so yeah, it's clearly a miracle. Clearly God stepped in.
Mm-hmm. And they, she do all the time, right?
Yeah.
We just can't see it. We have that, so we have to sort of suspend disbelief. We have to access the parts of our soul that just sort of knows it's never been wounded or hurt or injured or anything. And that's what your dad did. Your dad has such fervent belief that actually helped him be able to access the part of him that knew it was true.
Yeah.
Right?
It's amazing. It's actually really amazing. You
Yeah,
know?
that's awesome.
It's really cool. But then there's this shame that comes along with it.
Unfortunately, and that's, I think, again, shame is a human condition. It's part of the human condition, and I think it's absolutely something that we're supposed to overcome. And like I said, sometimes the message, like Jesus's message, sometimes gets bastardized. Sometimes it gets misinterpreted.
Right? Let's go with a lot of times.
We were talking about Dogma earlier in class, and one of the lines in the movie is like,
such a good movie.
The shit that gets carried out in his name. He just
Seriously.
Yeah.
So that kind of transitions into forgiveness, though, right? Like, how do we then take that shame? Because we were talking earlier, shame is about the person as opposed to guilt being about the act. I'm dripping with both of them most of the time.
Most of us are. Yeah.
So how do we take that and turn it in? Like, how do we forgive ourselves?
How do we forgive ourselves? Well, that's what the work is. That's why we do. That's why I teach what I teach. That's what doing spiritual work is really about. It's like making friends with those parts of yourself that you judge, that you hate, that you think are wrong or bad. It's like whatever aspects of you that you can't look at, that you can't stand to see, those are your power. That's your power. And so making friends with those parts of yourself, allowing that nothing has ever happened to you, like nothing has ever happened to you. So making friends with the pieces of yourself that you hate, that you judge, that you can't stand, that you can't look at, the parts of other people that you hate, you can't judge, and you can't stand to look at.
Right.
Like, shame can't live with empathy. Like, the antidote to shame is empathy and compassion. That starts with ourselves. It starts with having compassion and empathy for ourselves. And then when you can get to that place of like loving yourself, honoring yourself, being gentle with yourself, talking to yourself the way you would talk to a 5-year-old, right? Maybe you did bad things in life. Maybe you made these decisions because you were in a life or death situation, or it seemed that way, or you were human, right? Like it's
a thing we do.
Right?
We're not perfect.
We're in the school of life. We're in the school of Earth School, is like school of hard knocks. Right? Like, we came here to grow thicker skins, like, and to learn to be vulnerable. And it starts with having compassion for the person who made the decision at the time as the only decision she could make, or he could, right?
It's true. It's true. Because looking back, it's the decision you did make. So it really is the only decision that you could have made. End of story.
Right. Right. And if you think you should have made a different decision, okay, so you know better now. Now that you know better, be better. Again, I'm going to paraphrase Maya Angelou, but like, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, be better. But you can't armchair quarterback yourself from 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Right?
Right.
Because we hold on to those things for so long.
Right. Right.
But
And
yeah, I mean, having empathy and compassion for oneself is the first step to
yep,
forgiving oneself.
absolutely.
It's
Takes a
pretty
lot of
smart.
courage and discipline.
Yes, that takes a lot. That takes a lot. I mean,
Hmm.
because that's not, it's easy to say that,
Right.
but if you've had a lifetime of beating yourself up, as opposed to a lifetime of being compassionate and forgiving yourself,
Right.
like there's some pathways in the brain that are worn in a certain way.
Right, right, right. And that's why it takes courage to be able to look at the parts of yourself that are scary, and it takes discipline to do it consistently, right? And I would say that we can't do that work alone. Like that's why you need a coach, you need a healer, you need a teacher who can sort of hold
100%.
that space for you to do that
Yes.
work. Because I just don't think we can do it alone. You can't
Well,
solve
I
the
mean,
problem at the level it was created.
I completely, I mean, yeah, completely. It's like I have a cut on my right hand and my left hand is tied behind my back. Like, how am I supposed to do that?
Right, right,
Like, how am I supposed to
exactly.
get to that? Like, there's
Right.
only so much licking your wounds can do.
Right, exactly. And in fact, it'll probably make things a lot worse.
Some bacteria in there.
Right, right. It's gonna
Yeah.
be messy.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
you can take yourself so far. I was able to get myself out of the, but it's so funny, the further I climb out, the deeper I realize I was in there. I'm like, holy shit.
right, yes. And
Robin,
ultimately,
throw me a rope.
I'm giving you 16 ropes. Just hold on to one of them.
Here's a ladder.
Right. Here's a like there's an old parable like there's a woman and it's just funny talking about faith that, like there's a flood coming and there's a woman in her house and she gets a flood warning and she says nope, Jesus is going to save me, I believe in God, blah blah. So the water gets up to like her front porch and the army comes by with a Hummer and they're like get in the Jeep, we're going to take you. And she was like no, God's going to save me, I believe it. And so they're like okay, but like you gotta go, the water's coming. And so next thing you know, it's up to her first floor and they come by with a boat and she's like nope, God's gonna save me. And they're like are you sure you don't want to get in the boat, we can take you with us? Nope, God's gonna save me, whatever. So then it gets up to her second floor and they send a helicopter and they're like come on, you just please just like whatever. It gets up to the roof and she's really hanging on and they come by with another with another helicopter and just try this. And nope, of course she gets washed away in the tide and she dies. So then she goes up to heaven and she goes up to God and she's like I have a bone to pick with you. I had faith, I was loyal, I believed in you, I trusted, why didn't you save me? And God says lady, I sent you a Jeep, a boat, a helicopter, what more did you want?
Right?
Oh, I love that story.
I
It's so
love
true.
that.
Like how we just, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Be on the lookout.
Right?
I think,
Expect
right? Like,
miracles and then take the fucking miracle when it comes in.
right, right. Don't wait for a better one.
Right. This is your sign. This is it. Expect the
Yeah,
miracle and then let it actually be a miracle.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it is, I mean, that's when, like, for instance, a coach comes along
Right.
and you're like, hey, you know what? This is a good opportunity.
Right. This is my chance to do something different than I have done it up
Yes.
to this point.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. If I did, I would have done it.
Right, exactly. Because you can't solve the problem at the level it was created. You like so ultimately the journey is you're right. You're in this alone, and when you go through your dark night, it's a dark. You're alone. You're totally alone. But you have support. You have mentors. You have people who are like, I get it. I've been there. I'm gonna sit with you. Well, I know a shortcut, or we'll take the long way. It doesn't matter, but I'll sit with you. Why
We'll
do
get
things the
there.
easy way? We'll get there. Why do things the easy way when the hard way is just as good? But like, I've been there.
Yeah, I know. I know. And you're helping me. So I
Yeah,
really do appreciate that.
and you're helping all these people.
That's what I'm hoping. Well, I think we could wrap up.
It
Yep.
is 10:45.
It's bedtime for me. Bedtime for
Bedtime for me
bonzos.
too. Tip of the hat to you.
Okay. Rest of the day to myself.
All right. Thank you so much, Robin, for being on this. This has been a really great conversation, and I hope that people out there have gotten something out of it.
Always my pleasure to chat with you. Bye.